All right, welcome back to our next session with Mark Lewis of Netalico. Mark, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So, this session is all about turning emails into relationships. I think Mark and I were talking a little bit more, and this might kind of evolve into more on the AI side, which obviously we're really excited about. But before we get anywhere, Mark, can you tell us a little bit about your adventure and a little bit about Netalico?
Sure. So I started Netalico about 10 years ago. I started as just a solo developer, mostly originally on Magento, and then over the years transitioned more into Shopify, and then transitioned more into hiring a team. As a solo developer, I got too busy, and I realized like the only way to scale myself, besides staying up to 2 a.m. every day, was hiring a team. And so that's why I grew the company. And then I realized I really wanted to empower the merchants, not just from a development perspective, which is obviously very important for an e-commerce store, but looking at the design, the strategy, email marketing, really like look at the top-down approach of what are your needs, and then how can we help you, fulfill those needs.
Yeah. And I love the broadness because just for the audience listening, it's not just a Shopify agency. You're helping out Magento stores as well too, big commerce stores. I assume though, with the rise of Shopify, is there a lot more Shopify?
Yeah, it's definitely a transition to majority Shopify because of really the market. And I think also, the platform itself, I think Shopify has really grown in its capabilities and become more more versatile. I would say 5 years ago when we first started working on it, it wasn't a good fit for most of our merchants because it didn't have the features that they needed, and we could build or find those features on a platform like Magento. But over the years, they've really expanded Shopify's capabilities, and because it's so easy to use, it's fairly stable. It's really a great option for merchants, to kind of simplify their operations as opposed to going with a more custom platform like Magento. So
And
it's been
but
good.
Yeah, and actually, one more question. Just I hope the audience finds this interesting as well too. Like, because you deal with the migrations from one platform to another, correct?
Sure.
So, are there any patterns that you see when merchants are coming to you on? Okay, I think we have to move to another platform, whether that goes from something to Shopify or Shopify to something else. Are there patterns of the timing of that, and what is that like for even the merchants that are listening to understand? Ooh, maybe this is something I should consider.
Yeah, I think the timing is usually every 2 to 3 years, a merchant looks at either a replatform or a redesign. And if you're currently happy on your
Hmm.
platform, be it Shopify, Magento, or BigCommerce, then you look at, okay, like let's do a little rebranding, a little like cleaning up our look. If we're not happy with our platform at that point, it's a great time to consider a new platform with the redesign, because essentially going from one platform to the other, you have to start from scratch. You have to do all the coding again, everything anyway. So it's a great time to leverage that to go ahead and just refresh your brand as well.
Okay, that's great. And let's get into the weeds now. And so first, we'll just talk about kind of the high level, your thoughts on the email marketing space, email marketing as a channel first, and then I think you and I have talked before about AI, and I love that your thoughts on this. So we'll kind of venture into that as well too. So from email marketing, I guess the first question I want to ask you is that. When I talk to merchants, there's always this first feeling of like, well, email marketing is transactional. Um,
Mhm.
but I also see that there's a lot of push for it's like, no, it's actually relational. And what are your thoughts on that? Of where should the mindset be of a merchant when they start thinking about email marketing? Is it transactional? Is it really how like they should think about that, or is it more building relationships with customers?
I think it's both. I think a lot of merchants start from a transactional perspective, and even that word transactional email, it's the order confirmation emails,
Yeah.
shipping confirmation emails, all of those emails on they're important. Like people need to get them, So you start at the transactional level, but then you can look at those emails and see what relational, what customizable aspects can I put in those. Even creating a little more like character around your brand. One of the brands we work with is Oatly, like the oat milk company, and they have a very strong personality around the brand. And really look at how can you tell your brand story in even the transactional emails. It makes it a lot more real to the customer, and less of like, okay, I'm just getting this boilerplate email that's automatically fired off by Shopify or Klaviyo.
On that note, so Oatly, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like Oatly had this brand and this brand experience
Yeah.
first and foremost. That was really important to them. And then they kind of figured out how to add that to their communication channels regardless. If that's correct, walk me through the reverse. Let's say merchants that are listening and agencies are listening, like there isn't that brand presence yet. Is that something you can start on email and then kind of utilize throughout the rest of the company? Or do you kind of push brands to say, no, you have to understand who you are first before you start communicating, utilizing channels like email and putting brand into that?
Yeah, I think it can be kind of a collaborative process where I do think you need to start with an initial brand voice and understand what you want your brand to be perceived as, but then through emails and like open rates and click through rates, you can test those messages and really kind of refine that message and see what resonates and see what actually converts. The great thing about email marketing is that it's very numbers based, and so you can do a lot of testing to see what moves the needle on the actual sales of the brand.
Now, when I've had conversations with certain merchants about email marketing, I think there's two sort of mindsets. One is that, like, yes, we're doing email marketing. It's just like we're sending out emails. And then two, it's really a large component of their business. How do you tell your merchants, the people you work with, obviously to get to that next level? Like, what do you have to start thinking about? Like, or actually, is email really important where they do have to think about more strategically how it fits in with the business? Like, share me a little bit about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think there was like an old school thinking of email marketing years and years ago, which is like newsletters. You just pump out
Right.
a newsletter every week, every month, whatever. But I think what we're seeing now is a little more customization and less is more. Basically, if you don't have anything truly new to say, don't say anything at all, because it destroys kind of your brand's attention with the customer. If you're just spamming customers with sales every week, they're gonna start ignoring that, or they're just gonna completely unsubscribe.
Yeah.
So when we start working with a merchant, a lot of times we look at how many emails they're sending, and we try to cut back. Sometimes merchants are sending multiple emails a week, or even one email a week might be too much, depending on their brand, depending on what they're selling. If they're selling the same products week after week, why are you continually telling your customers about the same product in the same way? Unless you have something new to say, it's probably better to say nothing at all. Otherwise, you're just going to dilute their attention.
Is there a template that you use? And I'm not thinking of like a spreadsheet, but to start that brainstorming with the merchant of like, oh, I don't have anything to say outside of I want to sell this next product of mine. How do you craft like, okay, well, hold on, let's take a step back. Like, what should we be saying? And maybe even this kind of probably bridges us to data, I assume as well too, of like what information you have in order to share with them. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, and you can get data from a lot of different sources. We love heat maps, even classic Google Analytics, to see where people are going on the site, where they're clicking on the site with the heat maps. And then with email marketing as well, you can, do tagging, you can do some automation around the interest and trying to figure out what individual customers are interested in, and then craft your emails in a more customizable way, even like using variables in the email templates of like, oh, if this customer has a particular attribute, if they're male or female, depending on the brand, like a clothing brand, that matters. You don't want to be sending men, women's clothing, and vice versa. So whatever you can do to find those data points and collect those data points, and then use them to make your emails feel more real, makes the customer feel like this is more relational versus just an automated transactional email that they blasted to a million people.
And in your case with the merchants that you're dealing with, is the data going into the e-commerce platform? But also, I assume I'll talk about Klaviyo because they're clearly the number one email marketing tool for e-commerce brands right now. Is it getting the data into Klaviyo as well too? And I know you're a developer, Mark. So tell us, go ahead, get into the weeds of how do you capture this data and where are you sending it to so you can make those decisions in your email marketing campaigns?
Yeah, I mean, as I alluded to, Klaviyo is definitely the market leader in this, SMB mid-market segment in e-commerce. Probably 90% of our clients are using Klaviyo. And we really look to Klaviyo as the kind of single source for customer preferences, because the email marketing is so important in terms of the customization and preferences. So it's more important for us to get the data directly in Klaviyo than it is to have that data in Shopify. It might be different if you're using a different email tool, or even Shopify does have their own email tool, but our approach is going ahead and trying to get it straight into Klaviyo, and then we can leverage it, quicker and better. And we have less data issues if it's bouncing from platform to platform.
So as an agency, do you find yourself helping out the merchants, like capturing and then getting that data into Klaviyo? Or is that an easy thing to solve? And again, I apologize for the ignorance here, but I'm just curious if that's something that you work on at your agency a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot of installing pixels, and there's code snippets that you put on different product page collection pages to give those extra signals to Klaviyo, and by default those aren't set up. So that is kind of a behind the scenes thing, that if you just install the Klaviyo app out of the box, it's not necessarily going to give you that data. It's not super complicated, but it's enough that like most merchants wouldn't be able to do it themselves without a developer helping them.
Love it. All right, so let's take the next step, which is we're at the AICX Summit. So let's talk a little bit about AI and email marketing, and we'll kind of then jump into AI and everything else that we talked about earlier. But how have you utilized up to this point AI for email marketing needs? And then as well, like what would you recommend for certain merchants listening of like how they can get their hands dirty specifically within the email marketing element utilizing any sort of AI capabilities?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the tools themselves are going to, keep releasing more AI specific features. Even Shopify is just, trying to release the sidekick, that kind of thing. But, outside of that, I think that you can use ChatGPT, like the kind of king of AI right now, as an editor, as a brainstormer, as a copywriter. We see a lot of clients now, putting their brand voice, putting the assets of their brand in ChatGPT and asking it, hey, I'm thinking about doing this and this. Give me 5 different email titles. And there's still obviously a human element. You're in control of what you pick, but it's a great like writing partner to bounce things off of. And that's been huge, from the titles to the copy, and just really like leveraging the tool to almost 10x yourself, as opposed to having to hire a team of copywriters.
Now, as a reminder, and I assume most people know this, but what you put in, right, is what you get out of something like ChatGPT. So, and I don't want this to be the ChatGPT series, but I think you're a perfect fit for this. Just talk to us a little bit about custom instructions, because I'm assuming you know about that and how important that is, because you just talked about brand voice, right?
Yep.
And so again, it goes to the input and making sure that ChatGPT is ready to clearly understand your business. So then what it comes out of it is what you can utilize. So just walk us through, like, when I say custom instructions and then making input versus output, like, can you clear that up for us?
Yeah. So, in the latest version of ChatGPT, there's basically even another layer of custom instructions where you can create your own custom bot. And so I've seen one brand do it so far, and I think everyone should do it, is you can create your own custom bot and go ahead and give it all the material possible and save it. And it's going to always have that material to reference. And then you ask it the questions that you would ask the normal chat GPT. So it has access to the internet, it has access to its brain, but it also has access to all the materials that you've given it forever, basically. And so it can almost be like your history in the voice of the brand because you fed it so much of your brand.
All right. When you say, and I just want to go deeper into this so
Yeah.
people listening understand. When you say, "Well, give it assets," what do you mean by that? Like, what is an asset that you can upload into ChatGPT?
Yeah, so now you can upload almost anything. You can upload images. You can upload just a screenshot of old emails of your website. You can tell it, this is our website. Look at our website. Um, really, it's up to your mind, your creativity to decide like what you want to feed into this bot, because now it can essentially process anything.
I love
So
it.
I wouldn't limit, what you put in it. I would just, put everything you can relevant, obviously, to your brand, and then like see where it goes.
So, as an example, right? It's like, hey, here are our last 5 blog posts to better understand our style, and here's a logo of our brand asset, right? And here is our obviously our website and so forth. And maybe if you have PDF files of, I don't know, your brand voice, right? Like, get
Hmm.
all of that, and that's something that you can do, correct?
Yeah, totally.
And again, I know this is so simple, but it's not. Just remind us, like, an engineer can do that, or you need an engineer to do this.
You don't need to be an engineer at all. Like in the background, obviously, it's using code and everything, but now they've made the processing of like documents and PDFs and images very seamless, and so anyone can just upload those materials and it'll save it in like perpetuity. You don't have to always like keep giving it, okay, this is my brand voice because I'm asking you a question about my business today. Once you create that custom bot, you can be like the Netalico bot. It's going to retain all that information forever. And then every time you ask it a question, it's going to be pulling from there.
I love it. So let's kind of venture to the after you send out some email campaigns. Have you you could either use examples of your merchants or yourself. Have you utilized AI tools to analyze the data or make tweaks to email campaigns? So not just the input now and then creating the email campaigns, what comes after? Have you utilized AI to help you with this as well?
Yeah, so what we've done related to that is a lot of times we've A/B tested a couple different AI prompts, or
Hmm.
basically we asked it a question, it gave us two examples, or we asked it two different questions, and then we did an A/B test of that. Usually, the subject line is a good place to start because you can test the open rate. It's a very simple metric. And then basically iterate on that. Okay, like then tell the AI, tell ChatGPT, this won the test,
Hmm.
and then basically she, it,
It's
knows. Okay, we should go more in that direction, and you can just keep kind of iterating on that A/B testing and continue like basically to improve the open rate until at some point we've seen it kind of slope off. You kind of hit a ceiling, but it's a cool way to really like see a difference and a lot faster than in the past where you'd probably be racking your brain of like, okay, like
yeah.
gotta come up with another campaign, another campaign, like to test. Yeah, it's a lot of work.
I mean, that's why I think there's so much potential here, because just the amount of brainstorming that you could do with it is endless, right? Like, to your
Yeah,
just very point, I gotta think of another campaign. Like, within a few prompts, like, here you are, here are your next ideas. Not that you have to go in that direction, but ideas then to start brainstorming yourself off of, right? And again, just one other point of clarity for the audience, right? It's really important to continue these conversations on that same thread, because the model understands, like, obviously everything that comes beforehand, and then you don't want to start a brand new thread, because then you're starting from scratch, really.
exactly.
But Mark, maybe kind of last subject. Let's kind of broaden this out a little bit. I know we talked about this before we started, uh, or on our previous conversation, but just utilizing AI across your entire business. Um, we were just talking about email marketing, but outside of email marketing, where have you suggested to start utilizing AI across customer experience, wherever that might be? And tell us a little bit about those conversations and your recommendations for people listening.
For sure, for sure. You know, we at Netalico really promote everyone to use AI as much as possible and look at it as like a 10x tool for you. It's not so much about like, oh, people are going to lose their jobs. It's more about like you can become 10 times more powerful internally. And so, think simple things of like just responding to a customer email, um, running through ChatGPT, that can provide very valuable feedback of basically like, oh, maybe you could tweak this, maybe you could tweak that, and not super relevant to CX, but like even development, coding. Um, I think that like kind of the possibilities for a team to use AI to really 10x themselves are basically limitless. And I know there's a lot of fear about losing jobs, but I think that if you give your team the message of like no one's going to lose their jobs, you're just going to be that much better. I think that's very empowering for them to basically try to increase their productivity versus thinking of like, okay, if I start using AI, then 5 people on my team are going to get laid off. Um, and that is a fear at some companies. They're going to use that as a cost savings tool, but I think that's going to be I think that's going to be like a losing game, to always look at it as like, okay, we can cut these costs, we can lay off these people, as opposed to really like doubling down on your existing team and trying to
Yeah.
empower them to be better than they are.
What would you tell someone that wants to learn, but doesn't know where to start? Right? It's like, where do you go to better understand how to utilize for this business? Like, maybe would you go to an agency? Would you go, like, I don't know, like, where would you suggest?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have an existing agency, I think the value of working with an agency is that you get what I call cross pollination. Like we are exposed to so many different brands because we work with them and we're working with them in a fast pace versus
Yeah.
a brand that only has an internal team. They only know what they know, and technology and e-commerce is changing so fast. It can very easily, you can get tunnel vision of just knowing what you know, and having an agency, even if they're not full time, even if they're not replacing your team, as like a sounding board, can be basically a breath of fresh air. Like we were on a conversation with a potential client the other day, and it was just a sales call, and we were like, oh, maybe you think of this, maybe you can do this, and they're like, oh, like you've already helped me in 30 minutes more than my existing single developer has helped me in 2 years. So I think that kind of external perspective is really helpful for a lot of brands that just really get in the weeds because they're just kind of on the day to day.
Yeah. I I want to just call that out, because it's something that actually I didn't realize until this point, Mark, which is if you think about yourself compared to an agency, like you have so many partners that you work with, you have to always be on. At least I know in our sense, like here at Customer, when new features are coming out, especially right now with all these new AI features, we release a lot of information to partners first and foremost before anything else. And so here's like a very value added, or I should just say, it's a value add for talking to an agency because they are probably the ones that are responsible for really understanding what's happening right now. I'm sure it could be exhausting, but is that ring true for you and your team, Mark?
Definitely. We look at, one of the biggest things working with our partners as education and
Yeah.
education for our team so that we can educate the clients. I know as, on your side as a partner, it's very hard to speak individually to every client. And so a lot of times if you broadcast it out to the agencies, they're able to also disseminate it. And, we have weekly, monthly meetings with our clients, and our goal is to try to understand the ecosystem as much as possible and the new features in the ecosystem, and then suggest based on the client's goals at that point of like, oh well, by the way, did you know that Customer has this new feature, sounds very applicable what to your current goals, have you considered it? And that kind of conversation is sometimes just a game changer because like I said, they're so in the weeds of just like they know what they know. It's amazing for them to be able to get that kind of external spark.
I love it. Maybe last thing again, just to wrap everything up in a box here. If you're starting with AI, let's say more, I think it leads to email, honestly, just because of our conversation. I agree, where there's so many easy things to do. Um, you know, tell us one more time how you would start if you wanted to utilize AI specifically in the email channel. Go ahead, just give us a few quick examples.
I would say honestly, just go to ChatGPT. I would sign up for the $20 a month plan. I think it's worth it, and ask it, hey, what do you think of my latest email? And just start from there of just kind of getting inspiration. I
Yeah.
think I think it kind of leads itself to the next thing, and as you start experimenting with using AI in an external tool, then you're going to appreciate it more in the internal tools as well. Whenever Customer releases a new AI feature, you're gonna look at it more positively and say, "Oh, this is something that really can make me so much better." Versus, "Oh, this is something that I don't understand, I don't control. Maybe I'm just gonna skip it because I know what I know."
Right, right. Great. Well, Mark, thanks again for all the time that you're giving us, the expertise around email marketing and AI, and look forward to talking to you again.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan.
All right, thanks everyone.